All right. Thanks everybody for joining us on October 26, 2020 at 4 p.m. for our Committee of the Whole meeting. I just want to acknowledge that we are meeting and Zooming on the unceded traditional territories of the Comox First Nation. And due to the coronavirus COVID-19 emergency, the City of Courtenay, with authority of Ministerial Order M192, Local Government Meetings and Bylaw Process, Order number 3, implemented changes to its open council meetings. In the interest of public health and safety and in accordance with Section 3, Ministerial Order number 3, M192, in-person attendance by members of the public at council meetings will not be permitted until further notice. Council meetings are presided over by the mayor or acting mayor with electronic participation by council and staff via live web streaming. And with that, we can get into staff presentations, starting with the Boys and Girls Club.
Yeah, I'm happy to move the recommendations up today. I'll move that based on the October 26, 2020 staff report entitled Boys and Girls Club Request for Rent Relief. Council approve option 1 and provide a lease grant from the gaming fund of $2,338.60 to the Boys and Girls Club to cover 75% of the rental costs for April, May, and June of 2020 to assist with rent shortfalls due to the impact of COVID-19 pandemic with respect to the municipally owned property located at 243-4 4th Street on lands having the legal description as is written out in recommendation.
Second that. All right, that's been seconded. I'll pass it over to staff.
Great, thank you, Mayor. With that, I'll pass this over to Kate O'Connell, our Director of Corporate Support Services, to summarize the report and take any questions that Council may have.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So a while back, we received a request from the Boys and Girls Club of Vancouver Island, which is a nonprofit community group that provides learning skill development through core programming for children, youth, and families. The club had been leasing the property at 243 4th Street since May of 2015. And in early September, we received notice that they would be ending their tenancy along with a letter requesting some financial relief for outstanding rents. So in considering this request from the Boys and Girls Club, it was referred to staff. So that's where we are today. And essentially the club was asking for relief for a period of about 5 months. They had mentioned a reference that they had received similar relief from the city of Nanaimo. So I did undertake a bit of an investigation to find out how other cities were addressing similar requests. So I went and looked ahead at the city of Nanaimo, Campbell River, Comox, as well as Port Alberni, and found that different municipalities were responding to these types of requests very differently. And it really did depend on a case-by-case basis. So essentially the Boys and Girls Club with Nanaimo, because that is the closest comparison we have, had requested rent relief. Nanaimo, considering their large number of recreation tenants, had actually allowed for all of their tenants who had their facilities closed during the original period of COVID-19 pandemic closures to forego their rents. Rents did resume in July of this year when their programs resumed. And how Nanaimo got around the issues or addressed the issues of the community charter versus the Local Government Act. So under the community charter, municipalities are prohibited from providing assistance to businesses. However, the Local Government Act has kind of a converse statement where it says that a municipality has the ability to provide assistance as long as it's in the benefit of the community as a whole. So how cities like Nanaimo as well as Comox were justifying the rent relief they were providing to their tenants was that in the current market, there being really no market for these types of facilities, it was better to have tenants in place that who, upon resumption of program provision, could continue or resume their rent, rather than having the properties vacated in a market where there was no demand. Unfortunately, the situation with the Boys and Girls Club, specifically in Courtenay's situation, is different. They had terminated their lease and have since vacated the property. So the city's ability to justify that ongoing benefit of providing rent relief beyond the period starting in July, that wasn't an option available to us because of the conditions of their terminated lease. With that, there are other levels of government support that would have been provided to them. specifically the CECRA program, which was federally funded. And essentially what that did is it allowed nonprofits and businesses who qualified, so those who suffered a certain percentage of revenue loss over a term as a result of COVID closures, to qualify for up to a 75% rental reduction. The unfortunate part for any municipal tenants, so like the Boys and Girls Club, is as a municipal tenant, they were actually excluded from being able to access this type of benefit. So essentially, the recommendation is not that we provide them with any additional benefit, but that we provide them with the relief equivalent to what they would have qualified for under the federal program at 75% for the 3-month term, which would have a budgetary implication of $2,338.60. It would be possible for council to consider a different amount. However, be mindful that the 2020 grant and aid program was canceled due to the loss of gaming funds. And this would be considered a granting request outside of that application process, whereas council has signaled more generally that the grant and aid process has been canceled due to revenue shortfalls. So the recommendation is to provide the relief equivalent to what they would have received had they not been a municipal tenant, but not provide further benefit beyond that point. There is the question of whether or not this provides benefit to a business. The courts have been pretty liberal in interpreting how council perceives a benefit. So in this case, the benefit to the community for those brief period, those 3 months that you'd be providing a subsidized rate for, would be general support for the community and community-based services during a very challenging time. And the report provides some other examples of municipalities, provincial and federal initiatives that have sought to seek the same thing. And that is essentially the report, and I'll open the floor up to questions should you have any.
All right, thanks very much. And Councillor Hillian.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks to staff for the report. So first of all, I'm a little bit unclear because I thought that the report actually referenced that the Boys and Girls Club as a nonprofit is not considered to be a business for the purposes of the charter. Am I mistaken in that?
No, sorry, the assistance to business does not make a distinction between nonprofit and for-profit business. Where it comes in, it's the charter prohibits assistance to business. However, the Local Government Act allows governments to assist businesses and nonprofits where there is a greater community benefit as a result of it. So the greater community benefit in this sense would be that the local government is showing support for a nonprofit that was providing important services that was impacted due to COVID-19 closures. And it is recognized now that there was the unforeseen result that they were no longer able to continue providing those services from their current location in Courtenay.
Thanks for that clarification. So the second question is why would we not simply forego the collection of rent for those for that period of time, rather than going through the process of actually transferring funds effectively from one city account to another? Given that I don't believe it sets a precedent. I don't think we have any other nonprofits. I may be wrong, but I don't know that we have other nonprofits that are using city facilities and would therefore come asking for the same.
So I think the question has to do with the recommended mechanism being the lease grant rather than simply waiving of the rents owed. The difference is with the waiving of a rental amount or changing the amount from the market value to a decreased amount triggers our requirement to do public notifications advising folks in advance of the reduced amount being provided that we are going to be giving a benefit to a nonprofit or business for those purposes. In this case, we didn't hear from the Boys and Girls Club regarding the request for rent relief until early September at the period when they provided notice that they were going to terminate their lease. So they had actually been in arrears in their rent for some time, and then were asking for the rent relief too far down the line. So by providing a lease grant that they can then apply to the rent that they're currently in arrears for, we do not have the same public notification requirements that we would not necessarily have been able to meet because of the late request that came from the Boys and Girls Club for the assistance. So if they had
Okay.
asked us back in April, we would have had more options as far as how we wanted to respond.
Okay, so just to clarify, are we actually sending them the money which they would send back to us, or are we just going to, as I said before, shift it from one city account to another and notify them, and they'll still owe us a small amount?
Well, I'll talk to our director of finance about the actual mechanism of it and take her advice on what makes the most sense. But either way, the money will be applied to the rent that they have in arrears, because the lease grant is specifically given to offset the amount that is outstanding to the city.
Thanks very much.
Okay.
And next we have, Mr. Courtenay, did you want to add?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Maybe it would be a good time for Mrs. Nelson to comment on that question by Councillor Hillian.
Yeah, thank you. Through the CAO to Mayor and Council, I just thought I'd touch on Councillor Hillian's question about transferring from one fund to another, and we could do that. We would write the check from gaming to the City of Courtenay account and adjust accordingly, so we wouldn't have to be sending a check out to the Boys and Girls Club and collecting. So we'd make it as easy as possible, and just to also acknowledge the fact that we have done similar situations like this in the past, where an organization has requested use of even a city facility without having to pay fees, and we've used gaming funds to issue a grant for that as well. Thank you.
All right, and I don't see any further questions or comments. I just want to confirm with council, we're good to call the question. So with that, I'll start with Councillor Cole Hamilton.
In favor?
Councillor Frisch.
In favor.
Councillor Hillian.
In favor.
Councillor McCollum.
In favor.
Councillor Morin.
In favor.
Councillor Theos.
In favor.
And I'll vote in favor as well. All right, next we have the City of Courtenay Signing Authority Amendment.
I can move this one, Mayor.
Thank you.
I'll move that based on today's staff report, City of Courtenay Signing Authority Amendment, Council support option 1 and approve the following individuals to be authorized as signing authorities for the City of Courtenay in regards to all banking, investments, and financial transactions. Should I read the list?
Go
Go ahead and read it. Okay. Mayor Wells, Councillor Cole Hamilton, Councillor Frisch, Councillor Hillian, Councillor McCollum, Councillor Morin, Councillor Theos, Trevor Kushner, our interim CAO, Wendy Sarichta, Corporate Officer, Rayanne Matthews, Deputy Corporate Officer, Jennifer Nelson, Director of Financial Services, Renato Waika, Manager of Finance, and Annie Bernard, Manager of Financial Planning, Payroll, and Business Performance.
Seconded.
All right, thanks very much. And I'll pass it over to Mr. Kushner.
Thank you, Mayor. With that, I'll pass it over to Wendy Sarichta, our corporate officer, to summarize the report and take any questions that council may have.
Thank you. Through the CEO to Mayor and Council, the staff report is before you today in response to recent staff retirements and new appointments of staff in key positions. It's to revise and update the City of Courtenay's signing authorities for all city banking, investment, and financial transactions. The last time this came before council was at the November 2018 inaugural meeting. An updated signing authority does require resolution of council, and we have updated staff to reflect current staffing positions, as well as added some additional staff in order to provide business continuity. Once approved by council, the financial institution signing records will be updated accordingly, and we would require all today's appointees to re-sign those documents.
All right. Thanks very much for the update. I don't see any questions or comments, so I'll just poll council for their vote, starting with Councillor Cole Hamilton.
In favor.
Councillor Frisch.
In favor.
Councillor Hillian,
In favor.
Councillor McCollum,
In favor.
Councillor Morin,
In favor.
Councillor Theos,
I'm in favor.
and I'm in favor as well. Thanks for that, everybody. Next, if somebody could move the consent agreement for financial charges.
I can move this one, Mayor. I'll move that based on the October 26, 2020 staff report, consent agreement for financial charges Playtime Gaming Group, Council authorizes the Mayor and Corporate Officer to sign the consent agreement attached as attachment number 1.
All right, and I'll pass it over to Mr. Kushner.
Thank you, Mayor. With that, I'll pass this over to Ian Buck, our Director of Development Services, to summarize the report and take any questions the council may have.
Thanks very much. Through the interim CAO to Mayor and Council. This is really an administrative function of what the city does. The casino has managed to obtain large employer financing through the federal government with their emergency programs related to COVID. Through previous rezoning, the city acquired an interest in the land, and that's an option to purchase a portion of land in their parking lot area for potential expansion of roadway. In order to secure their credit facility, it needs to be registered on title, and that requires us, because we have an interest in their property, to sign off on it. It's something we've done twice in the past. Anytime they change their financing, we're required to do this, and so really administrative, but happy to take any questions.
Excellent, thanks very much. And Wendy, did you want to add, Mr. Richta, did you want to add something?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to verify the seconder on the motion, please.
We've got a few that are willing to put their names forward, so.
I think we were talking over top of each other. I know I seconded it, but there may have been someone else.
Excellent. Thanks, everybody, for participating. I appreciate that. And I don't see any further questions or comments. This is a housekeeping matter. So I'll just poll council, starting with Councillor Cole-Hamilton.
In favor.
Councillor Frisch.
In favor.
Councillor Hillian.
In favor.
Councillor McCollum.
In favor.
Councillor Morin.
In favor.
Councillor Theos.
I'm in favor.
And I'm in favor as well. Excellent. Thanks for that one. And next we have the COVID-19 financial impact update. Somebody could move that.
Mr. Mayor, with some reluctance, I'll move that based on the October 26, 2020 staff report, COVID-19 2020 financial impact update and 2021 grant and aid considerations, that council directs staff to cancel the 2021 grant and aid intake as a result of ongoing lost revenue in the gaming fund due to the COVID-19 pandemic.
Second.
Excellent. And I'll hand it over to Mr. Kushner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will in turn pass this over to Jennifer Nelson, our Director of Financial Services, to summarize the report and take any questions that council may have.
Okay, thank you through the CAO to Mayor and Council. So this is the third COVID-19 financial impact report that you've seen since the pandemic began. So we've been refining our estimates as the situation evolves. The intent of this report is to update you on the estimate of the impact to the 2020 financial year, as well as give you an update on our 2020 tax collection and receive some direction on the 2021 grant and aid process. So as you can see on page 43 of the agenda, we are now anticipating to be able to manage the revenue losses in the general operating fund within our current 2020 general operating financial plan. So in the previous update that you were given, we were anticipating about $1 million overall net loss. But now we've been able to incorporate some updated forecasts, and that difference is largely made up of increased development revenues that we're experiencing, which are much higher than what we budgeted. As well as we've seen some significant reductions in the forecasted recreation expenses. So we've received those robust financial updates from our recreation service department, and based on what their anticipated service levels are going to be to the end of the year. And so that's where we're seeing that significant difference from the last update you've seen. And that is good news for us in the general operating, as we anticipate being able to manage those losses on the revenue side within our current operating budget. Again, these are estimates at this point. That could change depending on the outcome or the direction we get from the Provincial Health Authority, as well as participation levels in recreation and any other unexpected events that may happen towards the end of the year. That being said, we are still anticipating losses in the gaming fund. Approximately $750,000 is what we expect this year, and that will likely continue into 2021 since the casino is still not opened and we don't have a reopening date at this point. Council will recall our grant and aid program is funded with gaming funds, and you had to make a difficult decision not to pay out the 2020 grant and aid. So again, staff are recommending that we not proceed with the 2021 process at this point. Also in this report, we're giving you an update on tax collection. So you'll recall in July when we reported to you, our collection rate was 88%. And the province did extend the penalty date to October 1st for commercial properties. So we now have passed that point and we're up to 97% collection, which is exactly around where we were last year. So we do still have about 1.5 million outstanding to collect. We do anticipate further collections before the end of the year when interest starts to accrue. And I know we just recently sent out arrears notices and staff are seeing payments coming in. So, and then finally, just letting you know, we're now working on the 2021-2025 financial plan. So we will have to consider some of these impacts that we're experiencing in that financial plan as well. So we'll be incorporating that as we work towards providing you with a draft plan. So with that said, I'll maybe leave it at that and open it up to any questions that you may have.
Excellent. And Ms. Nelson, thanks so much for getting this report done. And I think just to reiterate, I know it's probably been said before, but thanks so much for your capacity to really keep us on top of this as we move through the pandemic. It is much appreciated. With that, Mr. Kushner, did you want to add something?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And your comments are very timely. I'd also like to thank Jennifer Nelson and her department for collating all this information and keeping us on track. And I'd also like to thank all senior leadership about taking a very conservative and measured approach to expenditures and really focusing on essential services during COVID. But also I'd like to really thank Development Services and the Director, Ian Buck, and his staff, because if there's one thing that COVID really didn't impact, or maybe it did impact, actually, it made development even greater. And they did all this work and created all this revenue with the existing staff. Didn't have to add anyone. So a big shout out to Ian's group. And with that, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah, I mean, yeah, huge team effort. So Mr. Buck, if I didn't say your name, I absolutely much appreciated. And I had a great chat with you on the walk this morning as well, or this afternoon. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Councillor Hillian.
Thanks very much, Mayor. And I'll add my gratitude to all staff, and particularly Development Services and Finance. I want to say how gratifying it is to see that the vast majority of people have, in fact, been able to pay their taxes this year. And we don't know the level of hardship involved, but we know that there are some businesses that have closed. We don't know the individual circumstances, whether the owner of the business and the owner of the facility it's operating out of are, in fact, the same. But very much a relief to see that we're at 97%, the same level as in previous years. I also want to give a nod to previous finance departments and the councils that they have served for the city policy that effectively holds back gaming revenues for 1 year before spending them, because that has put us in a position where we are looking at significant changes next year, but essentially have that money in reserve from the previous year that was not spent. And I think that proves to be a prudent policy in a time like this. nonetheless, it's unlikely that we're going to see the casino opening anytime soon, and these revenues are going to continue to be non-existent as long as that occurs. And therefore, as I said, reluctantly, I think we have no choice but to suspend the grant and aid program. I know this will have some impact on a number of the organizations that receive it, but I think we have to be mindful of what the overall financial position of the city and our taxpayers is in passing this resolution. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hillian. And I think one of the big things as well, and we met with some folks from the casino during the summer, and you know, there was it might have even been spring, but there was optimism that they might be open during the summer, and obviously the summer has come and gone, and the province has held pretty fast to the idea that, you know, we're waiting till we're into the next phase, at least before they start to consider opening, which of course is going to cause an impact on those revenues. And I know I gave a notice of motion. I'll be bringing it back next week, and that's to do the to start to figure out how we're going to get the police RCMP funding that was using gaming funds, and try to have a plan for that, which of course those funds aren't there anymore. So yeah, it's certainly something that's unfortunate, and thank you for your words. Next we have Councillor McCollum.
Thank you, Mayor. And yeah, I want to express my gratitude to Director Nelson and her team, both for the work on this report, but also the ongoing communication that Council's received while we've been dealing with these times. And I mean, also all of our city staff in general. I mean, it's been a lot of managing of changing environment and changing regulations, and also dealing with all of Council's needs and expectations. So big thank you to city staff. I think there's some great news in this report. It's looking a lot better than the last time we received a financial update. So while it is unfortunate that we won't be proceeding with grant and aid, I'm assuming that this staff recommendation will pass. I think the city could be in a worse position than what we're seeing right now. So it is nice to see a little bit of good news when we're talking about the impacts of the pandemic. I do have a question, and I don't know if this is maybe too early in our budget process to wade into this, but I'll ask it anyway. And if it needs to be pushed off, then that's fine too. But I understand that there were a number of capital projects that we weren't able to proceed with given the impacts of COVID-19. And I imagine that will have some type of an impact on our budgeting process going forward, as I don't imagine that we'll be doubling up on capital projects. And I'm just wondering if staff want to comment on how they expect that kind of shifting of capital projects to impact how things look as we go forward into next year.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, maybe I'll quickly jump in. I think that's a great question. That's exactly what staff are contemplating now. And we've already gone through the water and sewer capital budgets. And so that report will be coming soon to council. But Councillor McCollum, that's exactly right. It's a combination of really reducing the new projects because of capacity and our ability to get done the deferred projects that are going to move to next year. And like I said, that report will come in a couple weeks, 3 weeks. And maybe I'll let Jennifer speak to anything else I may have missed.
Thank you.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for the question. So I guess just to reiterate, any of those counts or those capital projects that were in the budget this year that were funded with general revenue that didn't happen and potentially are moved forward into next year or a year after, depending on where they get aligned during the budget process and council approves, we would carry forward any of those allotted revenues with them. So it wouldn't be an additional draw on tax revenue in the future year. So we're holding that for those projects, and we will carry that forward. Hopefully that helps that question.
Yeah, and I mean, every year I assume that the capital projects are different and are funded differently. But And again, I think maybe it's too soon to ask the question, but whether or not us carrying over so many projects are going to reduce the amount that we need to tax under general revenue next year, just because we're simply doing catch up from the previous year. And that's fine if that's not an easy question to answer right now. I'm just curious.
Yeah, so in general, yes. So if we're doing all projects next year that were originally budgeted in 2020 and there's no new projects on there that aren't pulling additional general revenue, then in essence, it would reduce the amount. But again, we have to look at it completely overall in terms of what other operating items are added and any other impacts that we're faced with in terms of potentially funding something that was being funded by gaming or other lost revenues. So I wouldn't speculate that there'd be reduced taxation, but that your comment is correct and that there would be less pull to fund a capital project.
Okay, that's good. Thank you for that.
All right, thanks for that. And Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. And yeah, thanks for staff. Thanks to staff for all hard work. My question's in a similar vein. I was going to ask if we're going department by department, looking for those specific efficiencies or changes in priorities, and that will affect our future costs. Is that being done, and will we be able to see that at the council table?
Yeah, I can certainly answer that. That's exactly what's happening now behind the scenes is each senior leadership member is going through their budgets, recognizing deferred projects, what projects can actually be accomplished this year, which ones can be moved to next year. And then of course we have to look at that in the context of the asset management plan to see what projects we'll have to do for 2021. There is some good news in the sense that we've worked pretty hard over the last 3 or 4 years to identify and correct all the risk projects. So right now there isn't any real risk projects in terms of in asset failure. It's really about renewal projects, and then of course about new projects. And that of course will be the question that council will answer in terms of the appetite for any general tax increase, if any.
Yeah, well, I really look forward to seeing those, those reports, and so we can actually reprioritize. I'm thinking we'll have to do make some hard decisions here going forward. Thanks.
And Councillor Theos.
Thanks very much, Mayor. Yes, the Grants and Aid program, unfortunately, is a program that has helped many groups over the past. And this year, they are going to obviously be in a position of great struggle moving forward throughout the year. If the funds that we were providing them were dependent on to a great degree. But the reality is that all the citizens in our community and across the province and across the country are in a struggle right now, and that is a reality that I'm concerned about next year more than anything else. Is that this year, with all the propped up of government monies to citizens, it gives the opportunity for people to stay afloat and deferring their mortgage payments. Almost 750,000 Canadians have been deferring their mortgage payments, at least one out of the 6 that they were allowed to throughout this pandemic, and that is ending this month. I'm very nervous, what that's going to result in moving forward, and how that's going to affect our citizens' ability to pay for their taxes. And coming forward, this coming up budget, we're going to be having to make some very difficult decisions. And I've been saying this for a while, is that the costs of where we're going with policing costs, with our own staff costs, they're not sustainable. And during this time of year, or during this time period that we're facing, it becomes even more and more difficult. So we're going to have to make incredibly difficult decisions throughout this year coming up.
Thanks, Councillor Theos. And Councillor Frisch again.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to quickly echo that that sentiment, and that I know that people are having to buckle down and tighten up a little bit, and that sounds like exactly what we're going to be doing, and probably have been doing already here at the city. So I think we're all working on this together. Thanks.
All right, and I don't see any further questions or comments, so I'll poll council, starting with Councillor Cole-Hamilton.
In favor?
Councillor Frisch.
In favor.
Councillor Hillian.
In favor.
Councillor McCollum.
In favor.
Councillor Morin.
In favor.
Councillor Theos.
In favor.
And I'm in favor as well. All right, thanks for that. And next we have reports and correspondence. So we have the Comox Valley Farmers Market Association fall winter venue.
Move receipt.
Second.
Excellent, and I'll pass it over to Mr. Krishner.
Thank you, Mayor. With that, I'll pass this over to Joy Chen, our Manager of Business Administration, to actually be speaking to both the briefing notes. Right now, I'd just like to take the opportunity to thank Joy for really stepping up and communicating and engaging daily with these stakeholder groups. So thank you, Joy, for that. And with that, I'll pass it to you, Joy.
Thank you. Through the CEO to Mayor and Council. This briefing note is a update on the farmers market request for a semi-permanent location for the fall winter market. So there were two locations that the farmer market asked us to consider. That was the Native Sons Hall with expansion to the parking lot. And the other one was the Florence Philbrick Center with also expansion to the upper parking lot of the Florence Philbrick Center. After review of the locations, we decided that the Native Sons Hall would be the best, most viable solution for the market. The Philbrick is not currently zoned to permit farmers markets, and also the location of the parking lot requires a right of way for emergency vehicles, so we wouldn't be able to have vendors there. So with the Native Sons Hall being the most feasible location, it has historically been the location of the farmers market. It is zoned for farmers markets. They would only be using about 3/4 of the parking lot due to the fact that the Sid Williams Theater requires also emergency access to the rear loading bay. This is all done through consultation with the farmers market. We also engaged the DCBIA, and we also discussed this with Sid Williams Theater, who would be impacted by the market in the parking lot. One other thing is that we ensured that the market had a review of their COVID safety plan by the local VHA office. Farmers market are essential services, and they operate under similarly to retail markets. All participants are required to physically distance, and the vendors need to physically distance. However, they don't have the 50 persons maximum they have as in another events. So, but they still have staff and volunteers in place to make sure that they restrict the number of participants into the market, so people are still physically distancing. So at this current time, they are tentatively looking to open the market at the Native Sons Hall this weekend, October 31st. And as of this afternoon, VHA has given the thumbs up for their COVID safety plan. I'm open to questions now.
Excellent. Thanks so much for that report, and again, for reaching out and helping move this project along. Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor, and a big thank you to Ms. Chan and all the staff involved in this. I'm really excited to hear that we're able to make something happen for this group, and I think it's going to be especially positive, not only for food security, but for our downtown businesses and for commerce down there, and also keeping our community connected and able to go and enjoy our downtown. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
And I don't see any other hands up at this moment in time. So, and it is just a briefing note. So I'll assume that it is unanimous for receipt, and unless somebody waves their hands furiously, and we'll move on to the Lush Valley Food Action Society.
Thank you, Mayor. And with that, I'll pass this back over to Joy to summarize the report.
Through the CAO to Mayor and Council, this note provides an update on Lush Valley's request for support to utilize the Lawn Bowling Building for their hot meal and good food box program. So the Lush Valley had been running their hamper program out of the curling club, as you recall, and they received notice to vacate they'll be vacating the space in mid-October because the CVRD was putting ice into the arena. So an early suggestion was that possibly if they could relocate to the lawn bowling club located in Billmore Park. However, this location is not a viable location due to the fact that the kitchen there does not have a commercial kitchen permit, so they wouldn't be able to prepare the food, the hot meals food for that program there. It would probably take quite a few months and also some renovations possibly to bring it up to a commercial kitchen standard. So because the Lush is currently utilizing the lower Philberg for the hot meals program, operationally it made sense to just expand them into an adjacent room at the lower Philberg. This would be a temporary solution. Right now, Lush only has funding until the end of December. And also the Evergreen Club, which usually utilizes that space, has requested to restart some activities. So we are working with the Evergreen Club on a restart policy for that, pending a future staff report, and also subject to the COVID situation and what the public health orders are in place at that time. And I can open up for questions for now.
All right, and we should probably move in seconded. I did see Councillor Cole Hamilton had his mic off. I'm not sure if you were going to move.
I'll move receipt.
Move receipt.
Seconded.
And it's been seconded. All right, thanks very much. And with that, I will pass it over to Councillor Hillian.
Thank you, Mayor. And I just wanted to clarify, Ms. Chan, I think this might be your first council meeting. I don't recall you being present before, and perhaps I'm wrong about that, but I'd just like to welcome you and thank you for your work on this issue. Could you clarify with us what your actual position is with the city?
Yes, I work under Dave Snyder, and I am the manager of business administration. I probably, when council first started, I did sit in some of the meetings for some of the lease staff reports. But that's probably the first time I saw you, and so it has been a long time since you've seen me. But yeah, thank you for welcoming me. I appreciate it.
Well, in that case, it's wonderful to see you again. I just wanted to acknowledge, Mr. Mayor, that this is an example of one of many examples where the city has needed to react in a quick fashion to try and solve a problem that's come up related to the pandemic and the ongoing success of various programs and services within our community. And I just want to acknowledge and credit our staff, given the onerous responsibilities in keeping the city going under the pandemic restrictions and otherwise, that they've been able to respond in the professional and timely manner that they have on so many occasions, this being one further example. So thanks very much.
Thanks, Councillor Hillian, and I think that's absolutely appropriate. And I mean, so much happens, I think, at the city under regular circumstances. But yeah, certainly the pandemic, I think, has really shown how staff are able to just get stuff done and really, are making decisions that are making our community better. So really want to appreciate that. Councillor Morin.
Well, as usual, Councillor Hillian's telepathy skills are on point, because I was going to basically say the same thing. I would add that I know that it's been very stressful for the organizations, the nonprofits themselves. and really many of these services are like emergency services, basically getting food to families during this time. But of course, it also is stressful and creates a lot of work for staff as well. So I would just echo Councillor Hillian's sentiments and thank everyone involved in making these requests happen. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Morin. Appreciate that. And Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I just had a quick question about the funding for this particular program. Is this coming from the City of Courtenay in some way, or the CVRD? Are you aware of where the money's coming from for that?
I believe that's provincial funding. It's not direct funding from the city. I'm not aware of any direct funding they're receiving from the regional district, but we could look into that and get back to you on that.
It's not a big deal. I just, for some reason, we've had a lot of discussions at the regional district about food security and programs like this, and so I was just trying to remember. So, but it's good to know that it's likely provincial funded. Thanks.
Excellent. And Mr. Kushner, did you want to add?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I would just quickly add also that I've also taken the liberty to reach out to Mr. Dyson, the CAO for the regional district, to start the discussions around possible alternate location for this very valuable service. So there's some early indications that are favorable, but I'll report back to council in the coming weeks.
Excellent. Thanks for that. I appreciate it. And Councillor Frisch again.
Yeah, sorry, it made me realize we should maybe highlight that this service is for the whole valley, and in fact, really does belong over at the CVRD. So thanks for doing that, Mr. Kushner. Excellent.
And with that, given that it is just a briefing note, I'm going to assume that council unanimously accept this. And we'll move on to resolutions of council, and I'll pass it over to Councillor Cole Hamilton.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So this was notice and motion of this last week, so I guess we're relatively familiar, but I'll just read this through for the record, please. Whereas the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, UNDRIP, was adopted by the UN General Assembly in 2007, and whereas the Truth and Reconciliation Commission listed in 2015 as the first principle for reconciliation, that the UNDRIP is the framework for reconciliation at all levels and across all sectors of Canadian society. And UNDRIP was officially adopted by the Government of Canada in 2016. And whereas the Government of British Columbia passed the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People Act unanimously in November 2019, and whereas the City of Courtenay has identified building on our good relationships with the Comox First Nation and practicing reconciliation as a strategic priority for 2019 to 2022, be it resolved that the City of Courtenay adopt the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People as its framework for Indigenous reconciliation.
Seconded.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Councillor Cole Hamilton, for bringing this forward. I know it's been something that our council has been moving towards. We first started doing a recognition of unceded traditional territories some years ago, but I think this is honestly just a great step forward. And in fact, I noticed that Chief Higus Rempel has even liked our stream that's happening today, so she may be watching this right now. And I think it really is just extending that arm of reconciliation that much further. So I, again, just really want to appreciate you making this happen. Councillor Morin.
Great, thank you, Mayor. Yes, I would really like to thank Councillor Cole Hamilton for bringing this forward, and I like both of these resolutions for different reasons. And I've always felt when we talked about this in our strategic planning and how we would like to try to move reconciliation forward, it was always, how do we walk the talk? And it's wonderful, and I think important to have proclamations and recognitions, absolutely. But I think whenever we can take those resolutions and make them turn into practice or action is where we really can see hopefully a a very powerful message that we don't just, talk about these things. We actually try to make these things take action to have life behind them. So I'm hoping that that this goes through. I know it will. And thanks once again to Councillor Cole-Hamilton for bringing it forward. Thank you.
Absolutely, and I think on Councillor Morin's words there, I mean, one of the things that I think I'm always trying to do is looking for those opportunities to make sure that we can take these words and translate them into action. I know when I was on the regional district, it was pretty exciting getting lots of money in grants for the water treatment project. But honestly, it was, I think, more impactful for myself getting Comox First Nation a seat at the table so that they can be part of those discussions. And I think that's really the thing that our council, I think, unanimously supports is looking for those opportunities. And I think it's something that's continued and we will continue into the future. So, and I don't see any further conversation. So I'm going to poll council now, starting with Councillor Cole-Hamilton.
In favor.
Councillor Frisch.
In favor.
Councillor Hillian.
In favor.
Councillor McCollum.
In favor.
Councillor Morin.
In favor.
Councillor Theos.
In favor.
And I'm in favor as well. So glad to hear that's unanimous. And as Councillor Morin said, I think we knew that was going to happen, but I'll pass the right back to Councillor Cole-Hamilton for the next resolution.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And just as Councillor Morin was saying, I think it's important not only to have principles and to make them clear, but also to put them into action. And that's why I kind of broke this up into a first resolution, which states the principle just there. And this is kind of where the rubber meets the road. This is what we're going to do about that set of principles to actually act on building reconciliation in our community. And I just wanted to say that I really appreciated along the way had a good conversation with our CAO, Mr. Kushner, and with Mr. Buck about some of the wording. They were extremely helpful with that. And Councillor Hillian also gave me some good advice. And I got the opportunity to share it with Chief Rempel. I wanted to make sure that this is something that made sense to her and she saw as a positive step, and it was very positively received there. So yeah, the second resolution of what action we're going to take. Be it resolved, the City of Courtenay will incorporate the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People, UNDRIP, into the development of its official community plan. That the City will work with the Comox First Nation to incorporate UNDRIP into its planning and decision-making. And further, that the City will work with the KFN to develop a program to educate City staff about UNDRIP and the history and culture of the Comox First Nation.
Seconded.
Excellent. That's been seconded as well. Again, thanks for Councillor Cole-Hamilton for not only bringing the UNDRIP to council and getting it passed on the previous motion, but again, putting it into action right now. And again, I think that these are the things that we discussed when we met with Comox First Nation to discuss our OCP. And again, I think there was a lot of excitement about doing these things. So I really want to thank you again for making it happen. Councillor Hillian.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to acknowledge that I believe councils in other parts of the country have passed similar resolutions. Not a lot, but I understand Vancouver and Ucluelet to be among those. And I was fortunate to be able to participate in the Watershed Resilience Symposium this past week. And there was an individual from the town of Gibsons who was part of that, who got in touch over a reference that I had made to council's consideration of this resolution. So I'm very pleased that Courtenay is taking steps that will put us in the lead in municipalities in this regard. But I did want to just give staff, perhaps Mr. Kushner or Mr. Buck, an opportunity to comment on what they see as the implications of this. I know that there are aspirational aspects, but also very tangible and practical ones, which of course mean more work for staff. But I'm just wondering if they might like to comment at this stage.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll pass this to Ian Buck. I know that he worked pretty hard with Councillor Cole-Hamilton with respect to this and has already identified some training and some initiatives that I think will be worthwhile. But with that, I'll pass it over to Ian.
Yeah, thanks very much. You know, when we'd met with KFN staff, so city staff and KFN staff, and their planning consultant, we talked about the idea of incorporating reconciliation into our official community plan. So we'd kind of had that on our radar, but with this resolution, it, you know, probably the wrong word, but takes it to that next level in terms of giving us that formal direction that this is something council wants to see. What we've yet to fully flush out is how exactly we'll do that incorporation. And we have some other examples out there for municipalities who have single chapters in their OCP related to it. And there's also the potential that sort of on a policy by policy basis, we can incorporate those links. The other aspect is, and I think we've all had a chance to see it, and a number of senior staff certainly have, but the presentation that that we had at KFN with Jesse Moore and doing, going over their history and culture in the area. Very excellent presentation and powerful to understand the history. Shared it with my children when I went home, and something obviously with you know, my younger one in particular with high school courses around that, it was helpful. So looking forward to that opportunity. How exactly we can get all of city staff trained up and educated, we still have to work out, but I think it's exciting.
Excellent.
Thanks, Mr. Buck. And if I could just further comment, Mayor, I know that there are some excellent online training resources that that may be available, and would be happy to confer with staff in that regard. We do have an individual in the Valley, Mr. Woodletty Speck, who does cultural training with provincial government organizations throughout the province, as well as other people who are involved in that field who are pretty close to home. So I think it would be relatively easy to get the access to resources that would support staff in these endeavors. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Councillor Hillian. And I know we've even offered to work with Comox First Nations. Again, not something we can do during COVID-19, but as we come out of this, to see what we can do to help facilitate some community training around this. And again, I think that you know, this is obviously not just a step in the right direction, but again, with such a well-crafted resolution or resolutions for that matter. These are the types of things that we can even bring towards ABICC, UBCM, FCM, because there's a lot of talk about doing these kinds of things, but it's usually a lot easier if you can actually look at a resolution that already exists and help get this happening in other communities, not just on Vancouver Island or across the province, but right across the nation. And again, I think this is written really well, nice and simple. So it's that much easier for other municipalities to take this on. So I do not see any further questions, but I'm going to poll council, starting with Councillor Cole-Hamilton.
In favor.
Councillor Frisch.
In favor.
Councillor Hillian.
In favor.
Councillor McCollum.
In favor.
Councillor Morin.
In favor.
Councillor Theos.
Favor.
And I'm in favor as well. Excellent. Thanks everybody for that. It was a great discussion. And again, a big thanks to Councillor Cole-Hamilton for drafting that up and really working with everybody to make sure it was written properly. And I think even even working with Chief Rempel to make sure that, you know, that it really hit the mark. So really want to appreciate that. Next, we have an in-camera meeting resolution.
I'm happy to move this if you like. I move that a special in-camera meeting closed to the public will be held October 26, 2020, following the committee of the whole meeting pursuant to the following subsections of the community charter, those being 91C for labor relations, 91E for the acquisition, disposition, or expropriation of land, and 91G regarding litigation or potential litigation.
All right, and I'll pull council, starting with Councillor Cole Hamilton,
In favor?
Councillor Frisch,
In favor.
Councillor Hillian,
In favor?
Councillor McCollum,
In favor.
Councillor Morin,
In favor.
Councillor Theos,
In favor.
and I'm in favor as well. Next, under new business, we do have the Comox Valley Regional District request for approval for the Regional Transportation Planning Memorandum of Understanding.
Again, Mayor, I'd be happy to move something if that's okay. I'll move that. Yeah, I'll move that the City of Courtenay approve the Regional Transportation Planning Memorandum of Understanding, and that Council endorse the proper person to sign it.
Second.
Excellent. And I'll pass it over to Mr. Kushner.
Yeah, I think in a review of this request, I think it might be appropriate to do a quick staff report and, quantify some hours that will need to be spent, and the timing is appropriate with the budget looming. I think it's a great effort that seriously can result in some really good synergies. I know that there's a lot of history with a lot of projects, as to why certain municipalities did one thing and why others did another. And I think this is a really good opportunity to collaborate. But I do think that there is some capacity that should be quantified, and maybe even some costs. Just looking at the report, there definitely does seem to be some costs involved. And I know that either myself or Mr. Shaw, Director of Public Works, or maybe even Chris Davidson, our Director of Engineering, will be required to attend some of these meetings. So I think we could pull off a staff report pretty quickly and get this back in front of council for a resolution, which frankly, I think this report probably deserves a resolution, because a lot of work went into the MOU.
All right, Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, I respect the fact that staff would like to come back with some more information for us. I could definitely endorse a postponement or referral to a staff report. I did want to outline my understanding of it, because I've worked on it a lot. It's actually come from the Integrated Regional Transportation Select Committee. And the purpose of it really is to use the regional growth strategy to advance regional transportation. And that would be transportation projects and initiatives that don't fall under any single municipality. So there are things that we would look at in the Valley and say, well, that would be nice to have, and it kind of affects us as a municipality. But there are all these other players involved, and frankly, that's just it's not in our powers to pull those off or to do them on our own. So this uses also a technical advisory committee that already meets, and so this would be a standing agenda item in those meetings. I assume it's the CAOs that sit in it. Sometimes the engineers, the head engineers, sit in it, as you outlined, Mr. Kushner. So it would just be a standing item where those staff people can get together and say, well, here are a bunch of regional projects. Are any of these possible, or any of these priorities in as a region? And then they would move forward to the regional district board, and then they could be actioned or not. But it's that mechanism to move those projects through a process to be realized. So just thought I'd clarify that, and yeah, I'll leave it to someone else to postpone it, if that's okay.
All right, and with that, Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll move that we defer this motion to a future meeting to allow time for the preparation of a staff report.
I'll second that.
All right. Thanks, Councillor Frisch. With that, I don't see any further questions or comments. Is that good, Mr. Kushner, for staff? We're good now?
Yeah, that's excellent. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks very much. I'll poll council, starting with Councillor Cole Hamilton.
In favor?
Councillor Frisch.
In favor.
Councillor Hillian.
In favor.
Councillor McCollum.
In favor.
Councillor Morin.
In favor.
Councillor Theos.
In favor.
And I'm in favor as well. Excellent. And next we have on here is the Courtenay District Museum letter of support. just going to mute your mic again, Councillor Theo. Sorry, there's some background noise.
Mr. Mayor, could we hear from staff so we can be clear about what sort of resolution we need here? I'm not sure if it's a receipt or if we need to move to write a support letter.
Okay, fair enough. I'll pass it over to Mr. Courtenay.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, for clarity, it is a letter of support, but with that, I'll pass this back to Joy Channer, our Manager of Business Administration. She's been working with the museum group and can provide context and background.
Excuse me, to the CAO and Mayor and Council. So through the Community Economic Recovery Infrastructure Program offered by the province, there is provincial funding up to $1 million for capital projects. Any project needs to start by December 31st, 2021 and be completed by March 31st, 2023. The Courtenay Museum has for the longest time has been looking for expansion space, and where they see this ideal opportunity would be in the back of the museum, where the loading bay is. This project hits all the requirements in terms of it that the province is looking for, in terms of it will support economic resiliency, tourism, heritage, factors that are impacted by COVID-19. It will help improve their archival areas. It'll expand their natural history section and collection areas, and it will allow public access to their fossil preparation. So it'll be exciting for definitely for museum fans. This also allows them to leverage the funding. Their current budget is, I believe, 1.4 million. So they could use this funding to look at other grants that may be available so they're able to meet their 1.4 million budget. Right now, the city has a license of occupation with the museum. So this is just a letter of support towards the funding, but there'll be some additional work if they are successful in the grant in terms of project management and what supports the city will be providing to this project.
All right. Councillor Hillian.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll move that the city give approval in principle to the museum proceeding with this application and that the city provide a letter of support.
Second.
Excellent. Are there any further questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll poll council, starting with Councillor Cole-Hamilton.
In favor.
Councillor Frisch.
In favor.
Councillor Hillian.
In favor.
Councillor McCollum.
In favor.
Councillor Morin.
In favor.
Councillor Theos.
Support.
And I'm in favor as well. Excellent. And before we hit adjournment, I did just want to again recognize staff in a more public forum here. I know I've thanked them earlier, but we did get a request from the Art Gallery, the Comox Valley Art Gallery, again, a Comox Valley-wide organization, but they were looking for a letter of support from the city of Courtenay for a $500,000 program, and we were able to turn that around within hours, basically. And I just really want to thank staff for making that happen. Sharon has sent a letter to council as well, which I've shared with staff to thank them or to forward that thanks on from the art gallery. But I think it does really speak to people that are really passionate about our community and are doing everything they can. And also just want to, Joy Chen, you've done a great job tonight. You've done a lot of talking, and I really want to appreciate how prepared you were, and all of staff for that matter, but really want to say thanks. With that, we got one last thing on the agenda.
Move adjournment.
I think everybody said it at the same time. All right, we'll assume that everybody's in favor.